Hi, this is Joseph Lesser, and I'm going to be covering some of the fundamentals of formatting in this mini lesson. And I'm going to be using Excel 2016. And I do this because it's the most recent version, and that's kind of nice to show. And it's also exactly the same as earlier versions. Everything's going to seem extremely familiar. The buttons have changed their looks just a little bit, but they're the same buttons, and they work in exactly the same way. So what's in this lesson? Well, we're going to be covering some of the basics of formatting pertaining to alignment, fonts, some of the basics of number formatting, a little bit of date formatting, and then we're also going to be looking at how to clear the formatting out. So let's get going. I'll meet you in Excel. Well, here I am in Excel 2016, and I've got a worksheet open called 6 Months Expenses, and I'll be doing some formatting with some of this information up here. And I want to bring your attention to the Home tab and the Font group, the Alignment group, and the Number group. So on this tab there are various groups, and we're just going to be working with these three groups. Okay, I'd like to start with Alignment Basics. So we'll be working with this group here. And in particular, we're going to be working with these three buttons: Left Align, Center, and Right Align. And I will demonstrate by first highlighting these cells. So whatever the cells are that I have selected, when I click on one of these command buttons, they will operate on those cells. Now you'll notice of these three cells, none of them are selected right now. That means the default alignment is in place. Yeah, what's the default alignment? Well, the default alignment means what Excel is going to do to something that you enter in a cell if there are no formatting rules applied. Let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to jump out of that selection for just a moment. I'm going to type in a word, apple. So there, that's text. Now text by default aligns to the left, although we can make it centered or right aligned. Now in another cell, I'm going to type in a number. I'll type in the number 100. And when I finish with that, that aligns to the right. So we get to see some default operations. And if I select these cells, I can see that none of these buttons are selected. Okay. Let's see what dates do. I'll type in a date, 4/4. They also align to the right. Okay, so let's go back to these cells. And I'm going to, instead of having them on the default alignment, I'm going to center align them. Now when there is an alignment active on a cell that you have selected, a color shows up behind the button that has the rule associated with it. So I can tell if I just click on this cell by looking here, it's center aligned. I can tell by clicking here that there's no alignment imposed. The default alignment operates. Okay, let's go back to these four cells, and I will try right aligning them. That looks pretty good actually for these numbers, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's what we're going to leave this portion with. We can left align, center align, right align. And one more thing, if a cell has alignment, by clicking that alignment, it turns off that imposition. So no longer is right alignment going to be imposed. The default alignment will govern whatever's in those cells. Well, let me go back to right align. So this takes a little bit of practice thinking about what's the default and what's the current formatting alignment rule. Okay, let's leave the center, left, and right alignment behind for the time being. And let's go into some font formatting. I'll take those same cells, and I'm going to be focusing first on bold. I'm not going to demonstrate italics and underline, but they work the same way as bold. I'll just put these cells into bold. And there you have those selected cells now have bold, and you can see the button is lit up. It's got a color on it. If I click it again, it turns off the bold, and I can tell by looking up here, there's no bold applied to those particular cells. Well, I'm going to turn that back on. So that's pretty easy. Now, the font face up here has a drop-down arrow, and if I click on that, I see a long list of fonts. And I'm not really going to go through this, just want to point out that you could change the font for those particular cells. Instead, I'm going to focus a little more time on the sizing of fonts. So if I click on this drop-down arrow, I can pick a font size, and as I'm hovering over these, I get to see the live preview of that selection. So if I like the way this looks, 14, I stay there and I click on it. Okay, so that's pretty handy. Select the cells, click on that drop-down arrow, hover until you like what you see, and then click. Now, an alternate way is to use the increase font size or the decrease font size. For each click here, it goes up or down a size in the size list. Okay? So let me click the up arrow once, twice, 3 times. I'll click the decrease size, the little A with the arrow pointing down or triangle pointing down. And for each click, it goes down one size in the list. So these are 3 very convenient ways of changing the font size. And lastly, as far as formatting fonts go, I want to talk about changing the color of the font. So with these 4 cells selected, I can click on the drop-down arrow associated with the font color, and I can pick any one of these colors. I'll pick up a dark blue. And there you go. If I want to set it back to the original color, I can click on that drop-down arrow, and I can go back to automatic, whatever the default color is for Excel. In this case, it's black. So we've covered some font formatting. Takes, again, some practice, but I think you'll find these buttons are easy to use. And there are other buttons on here that I'm not covering in this particular lesson. So I'm focusing on bold. Well, I didn't cover italics and underline, but I think you can use those on your own and see what they do. The font face, and the size of the font, and the color of the font. And lastly, I want to just do a little bit of basic number formatting. So I'm going to take these numbers and introduce you to number formatting, and I'm going to be using this group up here. And in particular, I'm going to start by using these 5 buttons down below. There's an accounting format, a percentage format, a comma format, and a button that increases the number of decimal points and decreases the number of decimal points. So let's get going. I'm going to start with comma format. When I click on that, you'll notice that these numbers don't have commas. So if I click on that, you'll see 2 things happen. Commas are placed into that selection of cells. That's very handy. And also 2 decimal points are added. Well, that gives me an opportunity to decrease the decimal points with this button here. I'm going to click it once and twice and get rid of those decimal points. So when I use this, it might do a couple things. In this case, it did. It added commas and it added decimal points. But I could quickly remove those decimal points with 2 clicks of this button here. Let me reinforce that by doing it again on this selection. Comma format, get rid of the decimal points. Now I don't need to put the decimal points back, but if you needed more decimal points, you could click on this button. And let me show you a variation on this. It's called accounting format. So this is going to put in commas and it's going to put in decimal points, but it's also going to put in a dollar symbol. Okay, so you can see that these cells have accounting format imposed. I'm going to take away the decimal points because it's really clutters up the screen in my opinion. And there we go with accounting format on a group of cells without the decimal points. So these buttons here, the accounting and comma, are very convenient. Decreasing the decimal points in this particular example is very convenient. And let's look at percentage next. I'm just going to go to a blank cell, and I'm going to type in the number 0.5. Now 0.5 is 50%. 0.5 of something is half of something, 50% of something. So I could now put in the formatting for that cell and see it display as 50%. Let me try a number with a fraction, 0.125. Okay, there we go. Let's see what that looks like as a percentage. Well, look what it did. It changed that percentage to 13% as far as the display goes. And here's a chance I want to increase the number of decimal points. So now I see it as 12.5%. I use the percentage button and I increase the number of decimal points. So that's an introduction to these 5 buttons. And there's one more button I'd like to show you. this drop-down button here for these common number formats opens up a menu of what might prove some useful formats for you, for dates, for times, percentages, etc. Okay, but I'm not going to be going into that. I think it's really great if you can learn how to use these buttons here. Now there's one more type of formatting that I want to cover. It's a little more advanced. It's for dates, but it also leads to lots of other places. So I'll briefly introduce you to this, and then we'll wrap up this mini lesson. So I'm on a date. I entered this before. Actually, let me enter a date from scratch. I will put in March 15th. Okay, start entering a date. And I don't necessarily find any dates here that I want to use. This dialog box launcher in the lower right corner comes to my assistance now. When I click on that little button there, I open up a dialog box. I'm going to drag it to the left, and it has many categories for formatting numbers. And I could look at the date category, and with my cell selected here, when I started this whole process, I can pick any one of these dates. I'll pick this one, for example. Press OK, and a new date format is imposed on that cell. Let me go through those steps again. Select the cell. I'll select a couple cells this time. Go up to the dialog box launcher. Find my way to the date category, and I can see other formats here. I'll try a different format. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so there you have it. Formatting dates with a slightly different process. So if you have some formats that don't show up here, go in through the dialog box launcher, and you might find by studying these different categories, there might be a format for you. Now I cover formatting in another class. So let me finish that, and I'm going to wrap up this lesson now. So what we've done is we've looked at some basic font formatting, some basic alignment formatting, and some basic number formatting, including some advanced work with the dialog box launcher. I want to show you a little bit about how to clear formatting. So I've set up this worksheet with some particular formatting in it, and a couple ways to clear the format. One is you can go to each cell. For example, I'll click on this cell, and I can see what's in that cell and try to figure it out and undo it up here. That's not a good way to clear the formatting. But I could just turn the bold off. I could change the font back to the default. But there's another way of clearing out formatting. But the way I'm going to show you clears out all of the formatting. So it's not like you pick and choose which format you want to clear. It'll clear everything out. And we're going to be using the Clear button to accomplish this. Up here, it's on the Home tab in the Editing group, the Clear button. So if I want to clear out the formatting for these cells, I could go to the Clear button. It's got a drop-down arrow, and when I click on that, I have various things I could clear, but I'm focusing on clearing just the formatting. It's going to leave the content of the cell alone. Okay, so there, it set the alignment back to the left. It turned the size of the font back to the default. It took the color away. Okay, so if I highlight these cells and clear the formatting, these numbers will go back to what they look like when I just had them as kind of pure numbers entered with no formatting. Clear button, clear the formatting. Okay? So a very convenient way of clearing out the formatting for the selected cells. Well, that completes this mini lesson. Thank you for watching. I welcome your comments and feedback. I really want these little mini lessons to work well for you, so appreciate your support. You can contact me through my website, josephlesser.com. For any reason, let me know how this works for you or for any other questions you might have. Here's a little bit of information about me, and I wish you the best of luck. Thanks very much. So long.